Hey everyone, my name is Sophia and I operate Sammy Down Designs out of Missouri City, Texas. So for this video, we are going to be giving this tired looking old English bar cabinet a fresh new look. This thing is in really good shape, actually. Surprisingly, there are very few spots with any chipped veneer. I can see it has tons of potential. And really, what it needs is a refresh and a little bit of modernization, something to give it a little bit more interest. I'm really excited about this piece because, along with it, I can get a little creative and put my touch on it as well. You can see that everything is fully operational. It even has the little strainer for the shaker cups, the olive picks are still there. The mirror is intact, and the glass plate with the blue and gold stripes, which were original to the piece, are still intact. The mirror on that fold down portion has some silvering and it just kind of looks a little dingy. So I'm not quite sure if I'm going to keep that yet. I love the size of this thing. It is very easy to just kind of put in, a small space in your house, and it just adds, I feel like, a ton of flair. I can see that underneath this finish is some beautiful walnut veneer, which I cannot wait to uncover. The previous owner put it on casters. The ball casters that are on there right now are not original, but they work well. There is a hole in the vintage backing of this piece, which I don't like it. It looks unsightly. I need to figure out something to do. And of course, I need to figure out how I want to up level it. So let's go. The first thing I had to do was take off all of the hardware and hinges that were associated with this piece, and there were a lot. I made sure to stay as organized as I possibly can. I labeled the hinges. I labeled the different sizes and varieties of screws. This actually did take me a lot longer than it probably should have. If anybody that's watching has worked on vintage furniture, you know that those teeny tiny screws that were the flathead slotted screws, for some reason, they built those little slots so shallow that it was hard to even get a bit in there to unscrew some of these. So, as one of my Christmas presents, my husband got me this really cool electric screwdriver, and it came with a bit that magically fit. So, I was super grateful for this thing. And still, it took a while. I put all of the bits and hinges and hardware in a bag, and my next order of business was to see about stripping the old finish off of the piece. So I put it on my hydraulic lift, which was yet another awesome Christmas present. I am not humble bragging, I promise. My back is actually thanking him for this. So my husband, quick story. So my husband asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said, well, here's my Amazon cart. And I had had this thing in my Amazon cart for probably over a year. So I'm super grateful for it. It actually did come in clutch. But back to the video, I needed to strip the old finish off. So I just used the smelly, not very environmentally friendly stuff that I had on hand, which was the clean strip. Wore my respirator for this, and then just applied it with an old chip brush, and it worked really, really well and really fast. So by the time I was at the other end of the piece, the finish was already peeling off of the side that I had already applied the stripper. Now, one thing to note about this is, at least in my environment, this day was like 80 degrees. It dries out really quickly. If you find that when you try to get the finish off that it is too dry, you can reactivate this by applying just a really thin coat of even more stripper. So as soon as you do that, you'll be able to scrape off the finish that has already peeled. To actually scrape the finish off, I started with my 5-in-1 tool, but the stripper had dried out a fair amount by that point, and I switched over to using my carbide scraper. You can see that towards the front part of the cabinet, there is that curved waterfall edge, and the veneer actually meets at that seam. So I didn't want to gouge the veneer and cause any more chipping. But using my carbide scraper, I was able to get off most of the stripper residue. And honestly, this is the very first project that the stripping came out so clean that I didn't even have to further clean residue off using lacquer thinner. So after the stripping was complete, I was able to just go straight to sanding, which was a pleasant surprise. I did most of the sanding by hand on this piece. I started with an 80 grit, worked my way up to 120, 180, and finished with 220. The 80 grit I was gentle with. I didn't want to gouge the wood, but I did want to get any sort of residual finish off. And I did decide to finish out the insides of the drawers as well. I wanted to get an idea of what the final color of the veneer would be if I just did not stain it and just sealed it. So I poured some mineral spirits over top, wiped it back, and I was just astounded at how beautiful the veneer was on this piece. Like I said earlier, it was walnut, and as you can see here, it is a more dark red brown type of walnut. It was dark enough, so I decided I was not going to stain the piece at all and just finish it. The edge banding on this piece was actually veneer that was going perpendicular to the grain direction of the side panels. So basically, the fibers of wood were just spanning a really short distance, and I had to be really careful on how I was going to sand that back. Again, this is a vintage piece. It was made most likely in the 1930s. So I didn't want to chip the veneer. I basically attached a square of sandpaper to my finger sander and use that to go along the edge banding and clean that up. For the waterfall edge, I had to be extra careful because when veneer curves over an edge like that, where the radius of the curve is the steepest, the veneer is also stretched the thinnest at that point. So it is very easy to just over sand right at that curve and wear through the veneer. So I basically really took my time with that. I used some very light sanding and came at it from various directions, always following the grain to prevent any sort of veneer burn through. I use my profiling tools with some sandpaper wrapped around. I also use my finger sander for this. And towards the very end, I used a really spongy foam abrasive pad attached to my finger sander and followed that curve. Okay, so I am going to paint where that really light wood was inside the top portion of the cabinet. So those two pieces, and then the back of the drawer that pulls down from here. I have some paint that I was messing around with last night. Let me get my sample. So I have this color and I have this color, which this is left over from another project, and I've never used this one. So I was playing around with the mixture last night, and at about a 50-50, it comes out to something like this, which I think works well. It's not identical to the stripes, and I did want a little variation. So let's see if I can make this one happen again. This color is Mount Etna by Sherwin-Williams. And this color here is Blue Cruise, also by Sherwin-Williams. So about 50-50 gets me this. Let's see if I can reproduce that. So I lined my little painter's cup with some foil. Makes cleanup so much easier. Just have to be careful not to tear through the foil when you're dunking your paintbrush in there. And also, when you're mixing custom colors, you want to make sure that you mix enough. Rookie mistake, I did not. So I got lucky, however, and on the second batch that I had to mix, it was almost identical, maybe a shade off. I made it work. So again, the two colors that I'm using here, the darker of the color was Mount Etna by Sherwin-Williams, and then the brighter blue is called Blue Cruise, also by Sherwin-Williams. In the clip, I said it was about a 50-50. I would say it is actually more like 70-30. So 70% Mount Etna, 30% Blue Cruise. Gives you a really pretty blue-gray color that I find really complementary to the stripes. So the stripes kind of dictate the paint color that I could have used. Dark greens, forest greens, are just beloved Art Deco colors, but obviously with the blue in there, I had to stick more into the cool blue family than go green. So if you've made it this far in the video, I really, really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment. I do read all the comments. I respond to all the comments. And I just can't tell you how much it means to me that so many of you have been watching. I ended up doing 3 coats of the blue-gray just for really good thick coverage. And towards the end, I did top coat anything that I had painted blue with Varathanes triple thick in a satin finish. My next project within this project was to figure out how I wanted to repair the hole just so it looks a little prettier and a little bit more thought out and put together, and also what I wanted to do with the inside of the cabinet. As far as the back goes, I thought it best to basically chisel out some of the veneer on the back and on the inside of the hole and basically expose the substrate. I did have some mahogany veneer left over from another project. It was basically just some scrap strips. So I had these scrap pieces of mahogany, and what I decided to do was use them to patch this square that I've been chiseling out. And I did that on the back and on the inside. Glued it, taped it, and it does look a little bit more polished than just having an exposed hole there. Time to talk about what I wanted to do with the inside of the lower cabinet. I knew I wanted to line the back, but given that this was Christmas week, I could not find any sort of peel and stick wallpaper that A, would match the vibe I was going for, and B, was able to have it here in time for this video. But I got super, super lucky, and I remember once upon a time I had ordered this Art Deco fabric from Spoonflower because they were having a sale. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to order it. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but this was the project. It just so happened that the vibe was exactly what I was going for. The color of the fabric was perfect. How I decided to apply it was use Mod Podge, and I did a layer of Mod Podge on the backing. I did a layer of Mod Podge on the back of the fabric, applied the fabric, smoothed it out with a Bondo scraper, and then also applied Mod Podge on the surface of the fabric as well. Now going on, Mod Podge is white, so you feel like you're just covering up your fabric, but it does dry clear with a slight sheen to it. I let it dry overnight, and then the next morning I came in and trimmed off all of the excess. Nailed the backing back onto the bar cabinet, and I was really, really pleased with the look of the backing at this point. With the backing taken care of, I wanted to turn my attention to the inside of the bar cabinet area. The pull down drawer in the front, I had painted and I knew I wanted to do a gold line design there. This is where that dingy mirror was initially. So I had decided against getting the mirror replaced because it mirrors are costly and it was a little too far gone to try to just kind of keep it in there. So I decided to do a line design. Full disclosure, when I start taping out designs, I honestly have no idea where I'm going with it. So the very first thing that I always like to do is use some thin tape and tape out some guidelines. So vertical, horizontal, so I know where the middle of my working surface is. And from that point on, I just play around with it a little bit. I try to draw inspiration, and the design that you're going to see unfold is actually like a third rendition. I had taped out certain things and they just did not feel, they just didn't they didn't sit well with me. So I would take that down. And this final design I actually got just by looking at the fabric that we just used to line the inside of the drawer. So it definitely mirrors that design closely. The first thing I do is tape out the design itself. And then, since I'm going to do a gold line, I basically flank the line that I've already taped out by two other pieces of tape. So I can pull away the tape in the middle and I'm left with a channel that I fill in with the gold paint. Regarding the paint itself, I actually get mine from Hobby Lobby. My local stores have it for $4.99 a bottle. It is called Liquid Leaf, and this is the color Classic Gold, I believe. I really like this stuff. It has a very good coverage. I just do 2 coats of it. Honestly, sometimes I don't even need the second coat, and it dries very, very quickly. Now, it is oil based because you actually would use mineral spheres to clean off your paint brushes. So you need to be mindful of what your final finish is going to be. Because if you apply an oil based finish over gold paint that is oil based, it will strip away the design that you worked so hard to lay down. So I had to keep that in mind as I move forward. I also wanted to do some sort of design on the outside of the cabinet. Now, this is just a me thing. With veneer this pretty, I did not want to apply paint to the outside of the cabinet to line with gold design. So I decided I was going to do a border on the doors with a little bit of a decorative addition to the corners just to frame out the top cabinet drawer and these lower 2 drawers. I used the same gold liquid leaf paint, and I think these came out really, really well. It's a small touch, but I think it levels up the class factor quite a bit with this particular cabinet. As far as all the hardware goes, I knew the hinges weren't brass. It turns out that the handles also weren't brass. The only brass piece on this cabinet was the tiny keyhole escutcheon plate. So I gave everything a light sand and I used Rust-Oleum metallic gold spray paint to spray everything, give it a fresh, clean, cohesive look. I was hoping that the handles were in fact brass, so I had them soaking in water, vinegar, and barkeeper's friend for about a day or so, and I was really, really hoping that they would clean up nicely. Now, they were pretty tarnished, so the tarnish did come off, but they weren't brass, so they looked pitted, and I ended up spray painting those as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish this piece. Now, as far as that gold line design goes, the design on the door fronts, I needed to seal that because remember, it's an oil-based gold paint, and I knew I wanted to do an oil-based finish, which would strip off all of my hard work. So I used shellac in the spray can. Now, you need to use de-waxed shellac if you're going to use it for a sealing process such as this. Canned shellac is 100% de-waxed shellac. It is in the fine print on the back, but it is on there. The reason you want to use de-waxed shellac is because it will allow your oil-based finish to actually adhere. If there's wax in your shellac, it will almost repel the oil-based sealant, the oil-based top coat that you choose. So I did a light coat of shellac that sealed in my gold design. And after it had dried, shellac always dries with a little bit of a gloss to it. So after it had dried, I used a really fine grit sponge pad to knock back some of that sheen. I did so lightly because I didn't want to pull the shellac completely off of my gold design. And then I went in with my final finish. Let's talk about the finish. I love an oil-based top coat. It really makes beautifully figured veneer pop. It gives it warmth and dimension. However, I am not good at applying this stuff. Even a wipe-on poly will give me trouble. It doesn't matter how much I thin it out, it always comes out streaky for me. But I was at my local Rockler and I truly think I found the holy grail of oil-based finishes, and it is made by a company called Old Masters, and it is, get this you guys, a gel stain polyurethane. So it has the ease of gel stain. You basically apply it and wipe back the excess. You let it dry. It takes about 4 to 6 hours. Ideally, you do it the next day, give it a light scuff sand, and do your second coat. Again, apply it, wipe back the excess. This stuff truly is foolproof, and I have never had a finish come out looking so luxurious. Okay, final stretch. The inside of the cabinet I had wiped down with Danish oil. There are some water rings at that bottom board there that did not really look any better after the Danish oil. So I stripped back the Danish oil and decided I was going to paint out the floorboard. I had some of the custom paint still left over. I applied 3 coats here, and that made it look polished and tidy. For everything that I painted in that blue-gray color, I did go back and do 2 coats of Varathane triple thick top coat, water-based, in the satin finish. After spray painting the handles, they looked really new, too new. So I wanted to give them a little bit of a vintage vibe. I had this brown antiquing wax from Bear, bought it on clearance one day at Home Depot, and I used my natural bristle brush to apply it, let it dry for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then buffed off the excess. The idea was it was going to fill in some of the nooks and crannies of the hardware and give it a vintage feel. All right, let's take a look back at the before. So this had tons of potential. Honestly, this was a husband find. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video. He found this for 75 bucks. I was in love with it the moment he brought it home. It has tons of potential and it didn't have a whole lot of damage. I could definitely see through the years of ambering and scratches and flaking, and I knew it was going to be a little gem if I could just pull it off the way I had envisioned in my head. So with a little imagination, creativity, and tape, here's what it looks like now. This was such a joy to work on. I absolutely love this piece from the very beginning. I love it even more now. I kind of don't want to sell it, but I think I will. I can't keep everything. The veneer is absolutely stunning. It is warm and inviting. The finish is buttery smooth. The lines, I think, definitely up level it. Gives the inside of the cabinet a little pop, a little treat every time you open it. I did go ahead and add motion sensor lights to the inside just so when the client opens the door, they can actually see what is going on inside. But tell me what you guys think. Did you like this? Do you like the line designs? Would you have chosen a different color? What about the fabric on the inside of the cabinet? Was that a move or not really? As always, thank you so much for watching. Please remember like, comment, subscribe, all the things. The more you interact, the longer I can continue to bring you content that hopefully you enjoy and you learn from. So I always say this is a learning channel. This is not a teaching channel. I'm learning alongside you guys. Thanks so much, and till next time.